D'Addario's newly redesigned NS Micro headstock tuner is even better than before. It has a wider opening ratchet grip, 360 degrees of adjustment, and a simplified button layout, designed in partnership with Ned Steinberger.
Hey everybody, it's Ted Drozdowski, Senior Editor of Premier Guitar, and I'm here today with Nick Raskulinecz, and we are going to be talking about everything, just everything. Oh. He's got a wall of awesomeness here, and even sidewalls of awesomeness. Guitars, microphones, heads, cabinets, and you all know Nick's work. You've heard his records. He's worked with Alice in Chains, Korn, Hailstorm, a kabillion bands, Mastodon. In fact, I think the first time I ever saw you at work was when I showed up in Franklin and I was doing an interview with Mastodon, and they were cutting one of their records, and you guys were doing guitar tracks that day.
Yeah, we made those once more Around the Sun record.
Yes,
yeah.
It was a blast to eavesdrop on that. I had a great time there. But anyway, it's good to see Nick again. And man, where do we start? You know, do you want to talk about the studio first of all? Because they're in Franklin, Tennessee, not too far from here. If you're not familiar with the climes of Nashville, Nick had Rock Falcon Studio. This is the new Rock Falcon Studio.
This is the new, updated, more spacious Rock Falcon down on Music Row. This studio used to be called Ronnie's Place because Ronnie Millsap was in here for a long time, maybe 20 plus years. And I kind of moved in here about 8 months ago, kind of looking for a new spot and some new spaces to record in. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
And over those 8 months, you've worked with who here?
I finished the Hailstorm record. We worked on the Beartooth record. We made the new Korn album. And I'm about to start a new record next week. Yeah.
Awesome.
Never stops.
Awesome. And I imagine that some of these characters were involved in that process.
Yeah, they were all involved in one way or another, yeah. You know, I have a lot of bands that come to me with nothing. They don't bring guitars or amps because they see all my stuff, and you know, if you hire me, you get to use all my stuff. So.
Right. Right. Well, there you go. Right there. There's more validation, as if more was needed. But you know, earlier we were talking about. I guess we'll start with the amps. Does that sound reasonable?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, earlier we were talking about which one you would save if you had to just kind of rescue one, and the one you were kind of leaning toward. Although you know that's a terrible thought, of course. Was this orange over here? Yeah. So why don't we talk about this amp first?
I got this amp from a buddy who got it at a guitar show back in maybe 2000, so 18, 19 years ago. And it's a 68 orange that was originally wrapped in the black Tolex. And it sounds ferocious. It's got a huge sound and a lot of bottom. And I use it primarily as a layering amp. So if we've got the main left and right guitars that are all, you know, big and blown out and distorted, then this guy comes in down the center, much cleaner tone, but really, like, you can really pick out all the notes and the clarity that it provides.
Yeah, so even though it's in a new context, that's the kind of thing that Peter Green was plugged into back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, you have to turn it up so loud to get it to distort that if you just turn it up a little bit, it'll just barely distort, but it adds a clean bottom end to the riffs that just makes the riffs just poke right in your face.
It's great. And to your knowledge, is it all original at this point, or have you?
It had a master volume mod on it when I bought it. Okay. So somebody was trying to make it be able to break up, you know, more at lower volumes, but it didn't work.
Okay.
It's a beast. It's so loud.
Well, where do you want to go from there? I mean, you've got these two great Laneys here too. I mean, if we do it chronologically, I guess we can say in the 60s for a while.
Again, I got these from a buddy of mine that used to go to guitar shows in Los Angeles all the time, and he would call me up and be like, "Yo, Nick, there's these Laney clips down here, and you know, this is what they want," and I'd be like, "Cool, get them." And this is a 60 watt, and this is a 100 watt, and I think it's Laney's version of a Marshall Plexi at the time.
Yeah, which is pretty unusual.
Yeah, and they're really, really loud, but they have this clip circuit on them, and they both have it, and it's like a super, super fuzz, almost like a super fuzz pedal. So you can click that in, and you can add the volume of it into your dry tone, and it just gets really, really blown out, like the band Fu Manchu. It gets like that type of guitar sound.
Okay.
And Sabbath. The story that I heard is Tommy Iommi used these on a couple Sabbath albums, you know, so, but they're great. They're really different. They've got a character unlike any of these other amps.
Yeah, well, they really look beautiful, and I'm sure they sound beautiful as well.
Yeah, they sound great.
Yeah. Should we go that way
Sure.
and then come back? And
This is a 30 watt high watt, and this was high watt's attempt to make like an AC30 type amp, type head. And this particular model of these 30 watt heads were built by Selmer, because Selmer, high watt changed ownership a bunch of times in the mid 70s and 80s, and the Selmer company made these.
okay. Now, since it's a Selmer thing, does it have a lot of headroom?
It's got a lot of headroom, and it distorts at a nice low volume. Like, you can see here, the volume is around 1 o'clock and the master volume is around 9 o'clock, and that sounds like a jangly AC30.
Cool.
It's a really cool sounding head.
Cool. Now, do you have a cabinet you would prefer to run that through typically?
I put them through all these. It's always different. It depends on the vibe of the song and what guitar is being used, and that Marshall basket weave is a great combination with that Laney, because it's not too high gain.
And does that still have 25 watt greenbacks in it?
Yeah, it's got 25 watt greenbacks,
Cool.
so they distort nice and easy.
Cool.
And then like the white Marshall over there has 75s in it.
Okay.
So then you can really open it up. I'd use the orange through the white Marshall.
Well, since we're looking over this way, maybe we should talk about the Marshall over here and also about the Alex Lifeson signature head.
This black Marshall is a 2550, which is a black cased version of a Silver Jubilee that they put out in the late 80s.
Cool.
And the Silver Jubilee is kind of famous because it's the slash head.
Yes.
That's what he used on the early Guns records, and it's just got that amazing tone. And I bought this at a little guitar store in Los Angeles, and I don't even remember the name, because I couldn't afford a Silver Jubilee because they're super expensive.
Yes.
And they hadn't been reissued at the time. So I got a lot of these amps in the late 90s, early 2000s.